bear's eyes are dead and empty. A thick layer of coal dust. This orange machine is buzzing like an old submarine. It has a hand-cranked ice cream churner on top and an electric freezer that appears to be frozen shut. Turning the crank feels oddly satisfying, like stirring your childhood dreams. In the distance, you hear water dripping. You slip your fingers under the frozen lid, but the ice is too cold for you to get a good grip. A pry bar would come in handy here. No, this is going to need something else, some kind of super pry bar. Don't even try to open it with a regular pry bar. You're just wasting your time. If you want to try again, then you need to have the pry bar in your hand, detective.
Equip the pry bar by going to the Tools tab in your inventory. From there, you can equip it to a held slot.
This orange machine is buzzing like an old submarine. It has, turning the crank feels oddly satisfying, like stirring your childhood dreams. In the distance, you hear water dripping. Only the black cable is plugged into something close to you.
Why did you do that?
The lieutenant. This orange machine is dead still. Both cables are unplugged. Somewhere, a machine hums along. This coin-operated viewer is facing south. The instruction manual says to insert 25 centimes and pull the handle while looking inside. Then use the focus knob to zoom in if necessary. Why place a tourist attraction in the...
There was a revitalization project in '49. A design studio tried restoring Martinez to its pre-war glory. It didn't stick. They got as far as the street lamps and the statue on that intersection. Then something went sour. I suspect that something was Évrard Claire, the union leader. He muscled them out. It's how it usually goes around here. We should have done something about the union 10 years ago. That ship has sailed, officer.
Your money disappears into the coin slot. A clunk, the ring of metal, the curtains on the display open. You lean in to catch the view. It's blurry, different blues and greens. In the middle of the shimmer stands a drab grey shape, like a ghost. The lenses shift. The ghost sharpens into an islet in the bay. In the ruins, a man-made structure is visible, a half-sunken sea fort. Its concrete almost reconquered by nature. It looks as if it was abandoned quite some time ago. Nothing but a rotten tooth remains of the anti-aircraft tower. A lonely birch tree grows out of it.
Really? I don't have the eyesight to make it out.
This is a wall on the side of an apartment building.
There must be another way into the building.
Hey, up here, Piggo.
A striking woman leans against the cabin top of her sailing boat, smiling as you approach. Her green raincoat glistens with droplets. A silk scarf is tied around her throat.
Good evening, officers. I'm Joyce. Joyce L. Messier. I represent the board of Wild Pines, the owners of the harbour. You gentlemen must be from the RCM. Dayton, my maiden name. I meant you, the Revachol Citizens Militia. The police. Nothing, honestly. I've said it to every drunk in town, and you're the first one who's responded.
Relax. She meant it in jest.
I'm glad to see you here.
Like steel. There is strength there. If she wanted, she could sink her nails deep into your skin.
I was dispatched to handle a strike, not a lynching. Anything I can do to assist the RCM in this matter, I will.
That is good to hear, madame. My colleague will take the lead on this interview. I should let you know that he is recovering from an unusual medical episode. Very unusual. But I can assure you of his ultimate competency.
It happens quicker than a shooting star. But did the lieutenant just wink at you?
How interesting. I wish you a swift recovery. In the meanwhile, you have my full cooperation, and the full cooperation of the Wild Pines group. Why, yes I am. Of course there are. We're on an archipelago. How else are you supposed to get around? Yes, we are. We are on Le Caillou.
Technically, the neighboring Ozone and Fas Alamer island groups are archipelagos, while La Caillou, by contrast, is a single fertile landmass, the fourth largest island in the world. It is not an archipelago.
Okay, if you want to get technical, the point is we're all on islands here, and sail is still the most expedient way to get from one island to another, especially when you're in a hurry to resolve a strike. I haven't seen anyone else drive a souped-up Capri Kenema motor carriage either.
Actually, that motor carriage has been specially issued to serve as a patrol and pursuit vehicle. It's for crossing long distances in the greater Revachol industrial harbor. It's not a toy.
Neither is this. A toy, I mean. It's a machine for crossing long distances in the Bay of Revachol, between the city and the islands.
You need to make this lady admit she's only riding around on this boat because she's rich. Before you do, it would be pertinent to ask other questions. Gather more info on this boat of hers.
The boat? No. It is called Cor de Leyte 19 because that's the type of sloop it is. It's a pleasure craft, a 19 pacer. It also happens to be rated for Category 1 racing. Though these days I mainly use it for business. My sloop? I like it a lot. It's the eel's hips, baby.
I'm enjoying this part of the interview. It has so little to do with the murder we're investigating.
Officer, I assure you I'm a highly qualified pleasure craft operator.
The crowns of her teeth are porcelain, white as the boat's hull as she smiles. Her nonchalance might be related to something called the Wayfarer Act, a law that says she doesn't need a license. Sly fox, you're not aggressive enough to harass her further on this.
Oh my, the E word. You mean to say that it's a symbol of conspicuous consumption? That I'm a member of the ruling class?
Detective, may I remind you that Mrs. Messier is a professional negotiator?
Then what does that say? Does it say docking reserved for residents of Rue de Saint-Ghislain, 33A? 33A? This old proletarian haunt here? As I said, plenty of people drive boats, of all social strata.
Your synapses flesh.
You mean eel's hips. But point taken. I am a bourgeois woman, and this is my fast, light, interminably bourgeois boat. Oh my, the E word. You mean to say that...
Detective,
Then what does 33A? This old... Yes. Anyway. Good. What we do. I'm afraid I don't speak for Wild Pines as a whole. It's a giant undertaking.
There was a touch of discomfort there. She wants to merely represent.
The Pines' core competency is logistics. Container shipping, freight, that sort of thing. See those airships there, blinking? Those are the shipping side of things. And that is the terminal. Another subdivision deals with energy, oil and gas exploration, offshore platforms.
The Wild Pines Group is one of the original Revacholian Indo-tribes. Companies awarded royal monopolies by the king, the suzerain himself, centuries ago. The king is long gone, but several of the Indo-tribes remain. Saint-Baptiste, Elysium, an unknown entity known as Brightest.
Why, thank you. I'm not at liberty to discuss the company balance sheet, but I can tell you that last year, the company booked more than 20 billion real in revenue. 20 billion is a large number, but the conglomerate employs 72,000 people. They all need to be paid. Then there are capital improvements, interest payments. A conglomerate the size of the Wild Pines is like a shark. If it stops moving, it will die. Then what becomes of those 72,000 families? It's a tremendous responsibility. They started as an exploration and cargo fleet conducting trade between the Samaran and Insulindian Isolas 250 years ago, when pine ships explored the South Seminese and charted Lomantang on behalf of the suzerain. Centuries of care, deliberation, and madness have gone into this endeavor. Vessels pass through the great unrest to re-emerge with apricots in tow. The logic of the system is totalizing. It's taken everything from its employees to build it. You know more than you let on. Certainly it helped, but most of the original Indo tribes have failed or been absorbed. To survive, Wild Pines had to grow and adapt. No suzerain did that. You mean aside from being the terminal's legal owners, who are responsible for moving 8% of the world's cargo? There are no minor cogs in the system. Each terminal must be accounted for, lest the entire system break. Every hiccup in such a system means thousands lose their jobs, the world over. I'm here to assure that doesn't happen. Everything. Right up to, but not including, trade secrets. First, you'd have to repeal the Emergencies Act of Trade in Aliments that gives me the right to silence. It's quite the octopus.
The octopus that straddles Revachon, the Emergencies Act, is the cornerstone of post-war Revachon, inseparable from the world it created.
Why? By throwing off half a century of foreign domination under the Coalition. Unfortunately for you, the Coalition also leases you the right to police West Revachol.
You'd be shooting yourself in the foot, in other words.
But I am derailing us. You wanted to know about the strike. I believe the official title is Senior Labor Negotiator. In practice, I'm a grocery clerk. I relay the union's demands to Wild Pines and return with Wild Pines' counteroffer.
And how are the talks going?
They're not. That's the problem. The union stopped all negotiations a week ago, after that awful lynching took place.
Wait, she just admitted that the lynching and the strike are connected.
Now they won't even let me into the harbour. There's a 2-meter-20 racist behemoth blocking the gates. What can I say? The union employs a giant covered in tattoos. A racist giant. I guess that's part of their big tent organisation now. Yes, I believe there is a connection, but that's a subject for later. Let's say I was not making the kind of progress I'd hoped for when I first arrived.
And when did you first arrive?
I arrived 3 weeks ago. Yes, in the middle of February. The bay was still partially frozen then. I prefer to do these things on site, like the RCM.
But the strike began in December.
I wasn't the original negotiator here. I took over after Mr. Gaumont hit a wall with Mr. Clare, the union boss. Mr. Clare refused to speak with Gaumont despite concessions he'd granted the union in prior negotiations.
This isn't the first time the union has gone on strike.
Heavens no. There have been 2 prior strikes. Both times the union won significant concessions, including overtime pay and a medical plan. This time their demands are more, I guess you could say, aggressive.
Ludicrous even. It's meant.
Mr. Clare told him to... how did he put it? Fuck off, midget. Gaumont is short of stature, you see. Yes. Keep in mind, this is a negotiator Mr. Clare has worked with before, and who was more than fair with him and the union. There are leaflets everywhere, and banners. What did they say again? Oh yes, every worker, a member of the board.
Most of the workers probably don't know what that means.
In its defense, another said, demand democracy. Pretty tame stuff compared to every worker, a member of the board. It's quite simple, you see. Every time the Wild Pines group makes a decision, about what? About anything really, it needs the signature of each of the 2,200 workers in its Martinez terminal. Just so you understand, this is but one of 22 terminals owned by Wild Pines. Essentially, not only are they kings of the company, they are also kings of the 72,000 employees of Wild Pines Group. That may well be. It's not up to me to decide who is king, but as negotiations go, it's not a swell start. I'm not sure. Naturally, I assume that was just their opening position, a hard-nosed tactic with a side of mockery. But there's been no follow-up, just the same nonsensical slogan repeated over and over again. And now, people are getting lynched, I hear. Behind the whirling in rags. A disastrous situation if there ever was one.
Excuse me, from whom did you hear about this lynching?
I first heard it from the boyar at the gates. The one whose very name advertises his aversion to work. I think he said it was, "Call me mañana."
This checks out.
Everard Clare is a man of the utmost integrity. If you can say one thing about him, it's that he always puts the interests of the workers first. Of course not. Everard is fantastically corrupt. I imagine he has a thick, viscous goo where you and I have blood.
If you were to prick it with something sharp, you could see it oozing out. A knife, maybe? No, a rapier.
He is the most corrupt individual I have ever seen, and I deal with men like him for a living. If there is anyone more venal, more irredeemably nepotistic, then it's his twin brother, Edgar. Yes, Edgar looks exactly like his brother, except for that lazy eye. He also talks exactly like Everard does, and when one's term as foreman is up, the other takes over. It's how they circumvent the term limits, you see, with a funny little switcheroo. While in office, they've embezzled God knows how much of their workers' dues. The Débardeurs Union was once a perfectly normal institution. 20 years ago, anyway. It must not have been easy to establish under the Emergency Act, but they did it. I can respect that. Organized labor at its best, as they say. Then something happened in the local chapter elections. The brothers Clare came and transformed it into a... how do you say?
A mob. The Débardeurs are a crime syndicate. Sad as it may be, I suspect we'll be forced to cooperate with them.
Refreshingly honest, officer. The company has tried appeasing in the past, but I'm afraid our concessions have only emboldened Everard and his brother. And your opinion, detective, if I may ask? I'm a curious and talkative person, you see. Would you say the Débardeurs Union is... Thank you for being candid. Sadly, Wild Pines have cooperated with what amounts to a crime syndicate for 2 decades. However much you feed the wolf always hungers. I'm glad you asked. There was a woman, the previous forewoman of the Union. She disappeared.
Disappeared?
Yes. On the last day of the local chapter elections, her daughter phoned in and said she wasn't running anymore, or coming to work. Ever. End of story.
This forewoman, her name?
Sadly, the company records do not even give a name. She's just forewoman in private correspondence, Holly. I don't even know if it's a sir or given name, and I don't have access to the Union's files. Downright haunting, if you ask me. The Wild Pines suspected foul play, but what could they do? It was the point of the presentation is, these kinds of things happen around the Clares. Watch out when you're dealing with him.
Thank you for your concern, ma'am. We'll be just fine.
Of course. How else can I help? Quite a few things, I'm afraid. The information I'm to share with you includes sensitive trade secrets. For the sake of my employer, I have to ask for your names and badge numbers.
Of course, ma'am. We should have introduced ourselves. I am Lieutenant Kitsuragi from Precinct 57. And this is my colleague from Precinct 41. I'm afraid he doesn't have his badge at the moment. I hope mine will suffice.
How curious. Why is that, Detective? I see. So, are you saying you lost your badge during the course of this episode? I can't hear you, darling. Speak up, please. Oh, dear. Some kind of encephalopathic amnesia. I don't even know how to respond. I do believe you, naive as that may sound. I simply can't imagine what you gain by faking such a condition.
As I said, ma'am, his technique may be very unconventional, but he is an officer of the RCM.
Of course, I sympathize, but I'm afraid I simply can't share anything more until I've seen that badge.
She's a professional negotiator. She should be open to some sort of mutually beneficial arrangement.
Of course. But before we do, officers, the situation is extremely volatile. The sooner we can speak about this lynching business, the better for all of us. This reality.
Yes, reality is your side case. An experimental side case.
No, but please, a little context. We're not in such a hurry.
We have time for you to tell me why you need a reality lowdown.
Ah, yes, the episode.
Don't be phased, madame. He functions perfectly well. He only needs a lowdown on all of reality.
We may be here a while then. Ask away, officer. I'll help however I can.
All right, we're in. I know these all look good, but begin with the first, okay?
We're in Martinez. Martinez is a district of Revachol. You would be excused for not knowing about it. Unimportant, they say. Forgotten, even. Shelled to smithereens during the Revolution. It's not really a sea, it's the Bay of Revachol. And the bay feeds into the ocean. Yes, we're on an island in an ocean. The world's largest body of water. The Insulindic.
Known to the early Revacholians as Les Immensités Bleues, the Blue Immensities.
I'm not a good ambassador. I've only been here once before, as a teenager. Not a lot has changed. This place used to be a province, a workers' resort before the city swallowed it and the artillery did its work. The reeds are the real star of the show here now. The further down the coast, the wilder it gets. Caillou, as you already know. Imagine a pebble. A smoothed-over pebble amidst a great blue sea, misshapen, cracked. The cracks are the River Esperance. We're in the delta of this river, on the 6th branch, the Martinez distributary. Revachol? Revachol is what you call a city, the great kind. History detective. They built this city to resolve history. Our part in it, at least. Our centuries. The nations of the Occident, or migrant workers from Seminine and Ile Marat, depending on your creed. In the DeLorean century, 380 years ago, they say it's where the terrible questions of our time will be answered. The tensions are highest, the fault lines deepest. By that I mean, Conflicts. Ideological conflicts. The stuff of men. We are standing on a fertile, self-sufficient island able to sustain up to 200 million people in the middle of the Insulindic Ocean, the world's connective tissue. It's where the money is. Oh, we're quite a way off.
A sparkle of lights on the horizon, like evening stars above the curvature of the planet.
22 kilometers from the center of the world. That soldering iron is the bank of the world building. The bottom floors are Insiacom. Coalition government, Insulindian Mission Command.
Silence. The water, the light. It's as though you're seeing it for the first time. There is no recognition, only the immensity of the sea and the cold radiating from it.
We are where we are. I have no truer answer to give, unfortunately.
This is one thought you need to complete. Where are you?
Was there something else you wanted to know?
This has been informative. Thank you, ma'am. I'm sure my memory-impaired partner has many more questions to ask. Might I suggest not asking them all right now? Messier will be here later too.
Absolutely. My commitment here is long-term.
It's better not to eat all your candy at once.
Indeed. I'm always at your service. These are unimportant times, Detective. You and I were born after the dust had settled. 1,000th of a second too late. It's a neurological disorder caused by a lack of vitamin B in the brain. Symptoms include a retrograde amnesia. It's quite serious. You should get yourself checked out. Well, it's either bariatric surgery or long-term alcohol use.
She nods slowly.
What I am not is a basic term of reality.
There may be a way to get her speaking about herself at some later juncture.
A bird? A sphenicid? Ah! This is the pier of Rue de Saint-Ghislaine, 33A, where the tenants have been kind enough to rent me a slot. Or two. A pre-revolutionary tenement. Old buildings are called tenements, you see. And new buildings, bâtiments. After les bâtiments nouveaux. But 33A and 33B are not nouveaux. They're old. This one used to be 8 to 10 stories tall. A real high-rise by the standards of the last century. Built to mirror the skyscrapers across the bay in the Delta. That was before the war, of course. Mostly the urban middle class, I believe. This was once primo real estate, before the cannons lopped 4 or 5 stories off.
Splat, splat.
You could be wrong, but from here it appears as if she's running the brush across her throat in a soaring motion.
Wonderful. The girl in the old lady rags looks like a sullen and rebellious member of a teen infraculture. Yes, you and I belong to the supraculture. We're common, the herd. The music on the radio, the food in the chain restaurant, those are all too popular for the girl in the old lady rags. She prefers a fantasy world, an infraculture with its own dress code and vernacular. It is an illusion, I'm afraid. There is no refuge from the supraculture. Young people who dye their hair funny colours and wear old people's clothes are stupid, and their little rebellion is self-defeating. All right, what next?
Suddenly, you're not so sure you're part of the supraculture.
And what would that be? I can see that, yes. I dabble in those dark arts myself, not so long ago. I assure you, it was a thoroughly supracultural phenomenon. All permeating. Downright mandatory. Nothing infra about disco, baby. Those days are long behind me. And even in the early 30s, I would say I was more of a new girl. Disco was a minor, but still enjoyable facet of the whole thing for me. The new. A cultural era. And the name of the decade it ravished, the 30s. It came out of post-revolutionary Revachol. It was ultra-liberal. It involved lots of partying, as you might imagine, and champagne-colored everything. By the looks of it, that would have been when you came of age. Now. Wasn't it Guillaume Le Million who said, "If you can remember the new, you weren't there"? Ah, yes. This is not very central to reality, is it? I can't be 100% sure, but I believe he died due to complications from venereal disease. All of them. I'm afraid no. But then again, one can't be entirely sure. It's all part of his mystique. Ask someone else and you may get a more champagne-colored take. Anyway, what other basic facets of reality should we discuss? Glad to have been of assistance. The little that I know.
Is what you want to say, but it isn't that easy. Look at that lady. Take a gander. Why, yes. Tucked away under that sturdy green raincoat, almost rustic in its simplicity, a silk shirt and matching scarf around her gentle throat, while dull orange pearls hang from her earlobes, red from the cold. Her light green eyes scan you, full of knowledge and worry, wealth and all its possibilities. These are the kind eyes of the rich man that seem to say everything is possible. Within reason. Now look at you, you misery-clad simian, barely able to tie your own laces. Your armpits are lakes. A scythe of booze precedes you. Your hair sticks to your forehead and your underwear feels uncomfortable. You're poor, poor as balls. You can't ask this person for money. You're too. Shame? You haven't really been in the presence of gentlefolk either, have you? What shame is there to be felt in front of these dock workers, cops, and hotel clerks, but to belittle yourself in these eyes of Odinil?
As I was saying, if there's any way I may be of assistance, please more lessons in basic reality. Glad to have been of assistance. The little that I know. Anything else?
Voila, you're doing it.
Ah, yes, of course. I'm sad to hear that. how much do you need? That's a good sum. Not too small, not fantastically large.
She removes a few notes and hands them to you. The paper is cold and oily to the touch. There must be about 200 real in that zip bag, maybe a little less.
So, I hope I didn't just bribe you, officer. It may not be technically illegal under the Emergency Act, but still.
You're right, ma'am, that donations are permitted under the Emergency Act, unseemly as it may be, as long as they are properly logged with the precinct.
Which he most certainly will do. Now, how else can I help the RCM today, besides supplementing its salaries? Of course, Detective. Take care.
Hey, psst. Psst. Yes, you. Word on the street is you're ready to start building communism again. You keep saying things like, down with the bourgeoisie, eat the rich, sodomize the landowners, impale all people who have more than 25 real in their pockets, literally murder all human beings regardless of their political beliefs. Funky style, very funky. So tell me, do you have any questions before we fire up the big communism builder, or do we get right down to it? Oh yeah, get the firing squads and the animal wagons ready. Too late to back out now. You can't make an omelette without breaking a few million eggs.
We should think about calling it a day, maybe. The nights are still... You should take care of that, then. I'll also take a room at the Whirling. One cannot get much closer to the crime scene.
Hello again, Office. I'm a Nighthawk. What can I say?
There's a little meanness in that smile. The worker is in a deep slumber. The worker continues to nap, undisturbed despite you shaking him. This
Can I help you? Yes, have you got it? Well? Great, thank you, officer. That's all I wanted. Payment for services rendered. If you continue to stay here, I just ask that you please pay your nightly bill in advance starting tomorrow. I'll unlock the electronic lock to your room. All the doors lock automatically at 9 p.m. Please pay for each night in advance starting tomorrow. 20 real per night.
I'll take a room here, too.
Of course. Always happy to have officers from the RCM as guests. Anything else I can... Do I have a...
It's not a shaker. It's nothing.
Am I smiling? Because I'm...
Play it calm. This man needs to understand you need a drink to help the...
Oh, well, in that case, let me pour you a nice big refresh... Don't be an imbecile. I'm not going to serve you a...
Hey, so we've been monitoring you internally, and now we know your Copo type. Yes. Guess what's yours? No, you're the sorry cop. The cop who's sorriest. Let's make it official then, shall we? No, you don't. Come on. You'll be back to saying, of course you are. It's okay. See if you can get something out of this. That won't happen.
Yes? What do you want to know? You mean like a brief? Do you want... 3 days ago, during that time, the victim had been stripped of a security guard or worker of... They didn't identify... There's a strong prejudice against involving the... Just to be clear, we are police. Good.
This is the door to the room.
Just a moment. You had some questions earlier, I believe. And besides, we should discuss our
The air outside is brisk. The lieutenant is silent for a moment. He listens to the traffic hum. Then,
Where shall we begin? We should talk about the investigation, first and foremost. But I also remember you wanting to discuss the RCM? I have a cigarette every night when I go over my notes. It's something of a ritual.
oh man, he looks so devastatingly cool with that cigarette.
You mean this? This isn't cool. It's an unnecessary trial of will and unhealthy.
Keeping the habit within the parameters he's given himself takes a lot of focus. It would be easier to simply quit. Yet, were he to quit, he would lose the cool factor. This man relishes his cool quite a bit, you know it all.
Yes, it's been a long and eventful day. Well, we didn't even look at the body, but we performed a thorough search of the premises of the crime scene. That's great. It's not my job to evaluate your methodology, officer. I'm just going through the facts. We weren't able to find the union leader, Evrard Claire, much less interview him. So that's on the to-do list for tomorrow. We talked to Joyce Messier, but didn't get any information from her. I have a feeling Joyce knows how dangerous the situation really is. We have to get her to talk to us.
If Kim is emphasizing something this much, it...
Above all, though, today was exhausting. What's with all the running? You run about. Is that a standard Precinct 41 practice? It's impressive, especially for a man your age. And in those hills. Nice shoes, by the way. I like the green. Goes with the orange. They're quite limited, actually. The power officers of the Rebachol Citizens Militia exercise most frequently is imposing fines of up to 1,000 real for offenses, in accordance with an interdepartmental schedule. Yes, although indirectly, as citizens can always request records from their local station. Officers of the RCM have been known to take bribes of less than the prescribed fine amount. It undermines trust in the RCM. We can arrest people, of course, but rather than bringing someone in directly, it's preferable to serve a station call slip. It prevents confusion and overcrowding. You can't. Those who don't show up become fugitives, though, and have fewer legal rights when they are eventually caught. It's about power projection. Thus far, they seem to mostly show up. As you may have gathered from the fact that we are expected to carry a record of our kills, like the one in the watermarks, we are permitted to use whatever force is necessary, and strongly admonished not to abuse that power. We don't convict. We arrest and send them to coalition government courts in Courron and La Delta. The prosecution works off our testimonies and records, which is why it's paramount to keep them. You have to supply compelling evidence for why it was necessary to use lethal force. In these cases, your partner is usually your witness. Not a good position to be in, by the way. Internal Affairs handles these cases thoroughly, by cross-examining you for inconsistencies. It is hard to cover for anyone, which is for the best. The coalition government and the moral intern noteworthy. The RCM was formed by the coalition government to restore order in the international zone after the revolution. So we did. Now we attempt to maintain that order. No more, no less. Or perhaps it is better to say we were allowed to form. It's a point of contention whether the citizens of Revachol or the coalition government founded the RCM. It's probably more honest, yes. Either way, the moral intern leases us the right to keep the peace in this city, and they will take it away if we misuse it.
Or if they think you do.
The Moralist International are the world's largest political organization. You know who they are. They have been running this place after the revolution failed. They're a union of center-left and center-right parties across the Real Belt. Our coalition government is just one of its many projects. They also run the ICP, EPIS, most intergovernmental organizations in the world. What do they believe in? They are Dolorians. They believe they continue the humanist project set forth by Her Innocence Dolores Day 4 centuries ago. Others say they are just technocrats.
Those others say they continue the humanist project set forth by Dolores Day.
Interesting question. It's a blue forget-me-not. Their motto is love, compassion, self-discipline. I think you can gauge what they want you to think of them from that.
Something kind and usual. Something almost self-explanatory. Something like the dark blue, serious color of the early night sky above.
A historic figure? The author of the modern age? You will have to look elsewhere for opinions. The subject of humanism is too abstract for me. The moral intern are a fact. I try not to have opinions on facts until they change. And it doesn't look like that's about to happen. Do you? We are in what is called the twilight of international law. The laws we claim to enforce come from the MI. Without them, we are simply vigilantes. Spoken like a revolutionary, not a cop. But hypothetical aside, in Martinez we already are vigilantes. At least the Union thinks so. I expect our job here to prove quite challenging. Yeah, it's getting very cold now. Let's go. Yes?
The bed is cold and not particularly inviting, but it's yours. The sheets look awful. The sheets feel at once coarse and clammy against your skin. The bed sags beneath your weight as you stretch out and finally close your eyes. And then sleep. And then sleep doesn't come. Obviously, you're in bed with your eyes closed, but it's not happening. Maybe it's the bed's fault. It's a little better. Colors, scenes, and half-formed phrases still litter your mind. Part of you is still trying to solve the case, isn't it? Your breathing steadies. A great silence washes over you until your eyelids twitch in your sleep and images start forming.
Do you remember the scent of your childhood? Do you remember your wife's hand on your face? Oh no, Funky baby, you stayed. It was the rest of it that left. Or you just stood there, with one hand on the bottle and the other on your dick, watching it go. Tell me, where are your friends? Human beings have friends, Harry boy. Where the hell are yours? No, it's gone. 3 times gone and never coming back. You failed. You failed me. You failed Elysium. Everything. The Pale and the Islas. On the surface, the outer magnetosphere, burning furious truth. 8,000 years of written history. You really dropped the ball, Harry. 4.6 billion people, and you failed every single one of them. You really fucked up. You're not coming back from shit, thrashing around in that high conductivity state of yours, bumping into things and acting like a clown. Who are you kidding? You're trying to what? I can't hear you. This is just a word dream now. Jumbled up garbage. The pictures are gone. The bed rises to meet you. A thin, sleep-like state. More glass than velvet, grinding in your head.
So something is wrong. Sleep shouldn't be this bad, this dry, this unnourishing. There's something wrong with your thoughts. Some kind of new type of hangover. Oh yes, party boy, and it's worse than the one before. Just think of the shit you saw. Here it comes too, so soon already. A silent alarm goes off in your head like clockwork, barely let you sleep at all. Time to get those clothes on, Harry. Time to go to work in the shit factory.